Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today on Face Off we are looking at two of Doctor Who's masterpieces of horror. And we are going to be looking at the horror of Fang versus Midnight. Two wonderful horror stories from Doctor Who, one from Classic Who and one from Modern Who, and both of them Doctor Who doing horror right. Doctor Who is so good at doing horror when everything is firing on all cylinders, and these are both two prime examples of Doctor Who doing it well. So we're looking at which one do you think is better between the two. And for me, it's horror of Fang. I like Midnight, and if I was talking about which one is objectively better, it's a hard call. Really, the only thing hurting Fang might be some of the dated effects. It could use some updated special effects. I'd be fine if it's the one that gets them in the season 15 box set. But other than that, it's really close from a objective standpoint. They're both phenomenal. They have similarities. Basically, both of them are kind of based under siege. They all take place in this very small area where, in Horror Fang the lighthouse, and in Midnight it's all in that enclosed cargo area. It both builds atmosphere and tension very well. It both has good guest characters, except for that woman in horror with that screaming. They're both wonderful stories. I prefer Horror of Fang myself, if we're talking about subjective opinion. It's Tom Baker, it's Leela, and I love Leela a lot. And I do enjoy the imagery and the way it's shot, the glowing green glow of the Rutan. It's nice to see the Rutan. The actor that the Rutan, the character that the Rutan disguises itself as, I think he does a good job as the old sailor and the disguised Rutan. I think he's also an enemy of the world. He's really good in this. I really like him in this. Most of the guest cast I like though. I enjoyed the set design. I enjoy everything about Horror of Fang. It is my favorite story from season 15. It's just, it does its job really well. It really does feel kind of like one last hurrah from the Hinchcliffe era, and I love that. Now I do like Midnight. I have some issues with Midnight, which I've talked about before, which aren't the episode's fault. It's just the fact it comes in series 4, and I would have rather had another 10th Doctor Donna episode, because I love the 10th Doctor and Donna. They're just so good together that I would have liked to have had another story really with them together. But the story itself is great. I love that the Doctor is at such a loss here. He's not in control of the situation, which this Doctor usually is, and it's played effectively here, where he's trying to be smarty and know-it-all works to his detriment here, to where they get suspicious of him. I like that. I love having David Troughton in it. He's great as Professor Hobbs. I enjoyed that. I love the creature in it. Between the two, I love the Rutan, but the creature in Midnight I do think is better. I think it's more effective. Mostly because we don't know what it is. Even at the end of the episode, we have no idea what this entity is. And we just know it's dangerous and deadly. And even the Doctor has no clue. He is just in the dark as we are about it. And that's fascinating. And trust me, they never need to solve that. I don't need a Big Finish audio or a book or another episode explaining the mystery of the creature from Midnight. I don't need that. Midnight works just fine the way it is. Leave it alone. But I enjoy both of them. They're both always a fun watch. I've come to appreciate Midnight more since my last rewatch of it. But between the two, it's hard to go against Tom Baker, and I do prefer Horror of Fang. Let's see what you guys had to say in the vote. We had 173 votes, and Horror of Fang was the winner. I'm a bit surprised. I think that's more due to just the subscribers who watch my channel probably are more Classic Who subscribers, because I do tend to talk about classic Doctor Who more. I think if my channel was one of the more bigger Doctor Who channels, I could have easily seen Midnight winning this poll. That's what I expected to happen. But since, again, I think my audience is more Classic Who oriented, Horror of Fang Rock did take a 57% victory. So Horror of Fang Rock, I cannot talk today, had 57%, Midnight had 36%, and Too Close to Say or a Tie had 8%. So Horror taking a little over half, Midnight still getting over a third, and only 8% basically calling it a tie. That did come out different than what I thought. One of my fellow Hootubers, Paul Bailey, says Horror of Fang Rock all the way. One of my subscribers, Henry Andrews, says, has to be Horror of Fang Rock. It is an absolute classic. The story, acting, and set design are brilliant, and considering it was almost completely studio-based, that lighthouse is great. I agree. It is also the only Doctor Who story I can think of with so many characters reaching an untimely death. Yeah, Horror of Fang Rock's known for that. You don't want to be a guest character in Horror of Fang Rock. And Tom Baker's monologue at the end really captures the creepy aesthetic of the entire story. I agree. Jeremy Duncan says, I only picked Midnight because it really hammers home how awful people you grow to like can be in a bad situation. That's true. That is how people would really react in that kind of thing. Philip Owen says, Midnight is one of my favorite Russell T. Davis era stories. But come on, Fang Rock, no contest. Ryan Carrick says, I prefer the Tom Baker era, and I'm not a massive fan of the RTD one, but Midnight is a superb idea. Sir Meows a lot 89 says, the Horror of Fang Rock. I could elaborate more, but I've already said enough. The Horror of Fang Rock. I agree. TARDIS Spider, who also is a fellow Hootuber, says, no contest. Fang Rock is a longtime favorite, and I don't like Midnight. David Hammond, Old Hams, always good to see David back, one of my early patrons, says, Horror of Fang Rock is one that comes once every blue moon. Me and David are both huge fans of horror. Huge fans of Horror of Fang Rock. We love this one. Matter of fact, when he first became a Patreon, his Patreon request was for me to rewatch Horror of Fang Rock and review it. Terrence was the best writer for me the show ever had. I think even better than Holmes. The man can just set a tone like no one else and build tension and suspense like no one else. Another reason it's my favorite of the entire show is its set design. It's very confined, simple, but so effective and believable. The soundtrack and ambient sounds don't get the praise it deserves. The best Doctor of all time, my favorite companion, favorite setting, favorite story. We'll never get bored of it. I want the Blu-ray to be packed with special features, and please give it a 5.1 surround sound. I like the way you think. Problem Being says Horror of Fang Rock is a Victorian horror masterpiece. The Fly Attractor, who is also one of my early patrons, and is also someone who has sent me many things to my P.O. Box, which I appreciate, says Horror of Fang Rock by a galactic parsec. Top 5 favorite of personal classic Who for me. Leela being an anti-scream queen, and it is awesome. I do love Leela in this story. She never seems to get panicked. I even mentioned that's a cool title for Leela. And he goes, I love it when she turns and slaps the one lady who is screaming. That bit is awesome. That bit is awesome. Mark says secondary characters in Horror of Fang Rock are great. Excellent writing. Fadi, I don't know how to pronounce that, I'm sorry. Corey says, well, that's Halloween sorted. Nakayaku says, easy peasy. I know how he voted. He would definitely say Fang Rock. Alice Collins, who is also one of my patrons, says, Fang Rock is just iconic. Midnight is amazing, but can never beat a great Tom story. Fair. Stephen Crane, who is a top-tier patron of mine, says, Fang Rock, the horror in space was old hat when I can't pronounce that word, did it in 1981. But lighthouses and horror are rarely done together. And if they're involved in horror, it's usually in relation to Dracula and the arrival of the Russian ship Demeter in Yorkshire. Or Yorkshire, however you prefer. That's true. I actually have read the original Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I did enjoy it. I read it back when I was in school. Bananas Are Good says, one of the hardest polls yet. Fang Rock is in my top 10 Baker stories, but Midnight is in my top 5 Tennant stories, so I guess for me, Midnight wins by a thin line. Both quite similar stories, and both have a great guest cast, apart from the annoying screaming woman in Fang Rock. Yes. And it's great when Leela gives her a slap. Have to give a quote from both stories. Gentlemen, I've got news for you. This lighthouse is under attack, and by morning we may all be dead. And we'll meet at that anti-gravitational restaurant with bibs. Simon Mincher says, for me, there's no comparison. Midnight is a very good base under siege story, but is limited and isn't a classic like the horror of Fang Rock. Tom Baker had his very best with Leela as support, and there is much more suspense, twists, and turns. We also meet the Routons, who I am very surprised haven't been brought back in Modern Who. Me too. Loz Hallett says, I have to watch Midnight again as I thought it was terrible on transmission. Me and my wife and son started drifting halfway through. Maybe I'll appreciate it if I watch it again. Hey, you should give it a rewatch. I agree. Took me, and then I mentioned on there, it took me a couple rewatches. Shamrock Particle, another one of my regulars here, says, both are from eras I find to be terrific, or be horrific. Both are from eras I find to be horrific. And then he goes, just kidding. Midnight is the better one, and not because it's easier to rip Fang Rock. Fair enough. So, even in the comments, again, Horror of Fang Rock sings the most popular. Horror of Fang Rock won the vote. And Horror of Fang Rock wins my opinion as well, though I think both are phenomenal horror Doctor Who stories and some of the best of their respective eras. So I'd like to know, what do you think of these stories if you didn't get a chance to vote in this poll? So comment down below and let me know which one do you prefer. Other things to do, click the like button and the subscribe button and the bell for notifications and all that fun stuff down in the description. Links to the Patreon, links to the Amazon wish list, a lot of goodies on there. Also, the P.O. box is down there if there's anything you'd like to send me to look at. I want to give a top tier shout out to two of my patrons, Stephen and Colin. I appreciate both of their continued support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. And most importantly, thank you for watching.